I've noticed that we are getting more and more American viewers on the channel.
Howdy, howdy everyone.
So I thought I'd be nosy and check out what other Americans are doing when it comes to videos concerning France, especially those Americans who are actually living in France. And one thing I noticed is actually most of the American videos are comparative videos, as in the 5 best or the 5 worst or the 10 differences between France and America. But what I did notice is that not many of them talk about the differences between the real estate business in France and the real estate business in the States.
No, monsieur.
Just remember that the actual French real estate system is completely different to the American one. Different laws, different system, different usage, and thus it's well worth taking into account if you are thinking about coming over to France to buy a house.
Oh la la, monsieur.
Before we get into this, the first thing you need to understand is that in France there's 2 principal setups of real estate. There's what a lot of agencies refer to the classic estate agent, which is the shopfront agency with salaried negotiators who are there working for their boss directly. And then we actually have what we call the réseau de mandataires, which are the chains of commercial agents, which are actually all independent commercial agents working for commission-based sales under the umbrella of an actual estate agent. You can come across both. They're both very common in France.
Okay, that's clear.
Yeah.
But what are the 5 differences I found? Number 1 is that although a lot of the actual big agencies in the States, such as Keller Williams, Coldwell Bankers, Remax, etc., have actually opened up franchises in France, when you go into their offices, don't expect the same service as you would do back in the States. Basically, these agencies, all they have in common is the name. They are still subject to French law, French system and French customs, let's say, when they're working. So you will not get the same service as in the States. It's a different system. Which leads me on to point number 2. Whereas in the States you actually have, or most agencies all use a common file between them, so you can actually go into an office in Washington and check out properties for sale in California, for example. In France it doesn't work that way, unfortunately. In France they have an expression which is chacun pour sa pomme, which literally translates as each to their own apple, or just literally each to their own. In France, most agencies do not share their portfolios with other agents. There's 1 or 2 doing it. There's even been a few attempts to set up proper systems, but they never really got anywhere. So although this isn't great for you who's actually looking for a house, you will need to actually contact each agency. The easy way around that though is actually going on to some property portals here in France. A very good one is a French property portal called agenceNEWTON, where they have lots of listings from lots of agents. But at the same time, don't be surprised if you see multiple listings for the same house, due to the fact that the exclusive mandate is only about 40 to 50% of the market over here. So those which aren't on exclusivities will often put their properties up with 3 or 4 different agents, and they'll all be advertised in the same house. The third difference would be the actual legal costs. To start with, in France, when you see an advert, the actual agency fees 99% of the time are included in the price you see advertised. They can be down to the buyer, they can be down to the actual purchaser, but in the actual asking price shown on the advert, that is including agency fees. But it does not include notary's fees, and they are the actual legal fees for the transaction itself. These tend to be a lot higher than in the States. Any sale here will have to go through the hands of a notary, who's a public official responsible for financial and legal transactions here in France. These actual fees are typically higher than in the States because they're usually somewhere between 5 to 8% of the actual asking price. Okay? This is on top of the price you've seen advertised, so take that into account. The fourth difference to take into account in the sales process or purchase process here in France is the home inspections or surveys, what the French call the diagnostic. Whereas in the States they are very much optional, in France they are obligatory.
Yes.
Saying that, a survey compared to a diagnostic is completely different. A survey in the States, as far as I understand it, is very much like the UK surveys, where an expert comes into the house, literally spends a few hours going around it, looking in every nook and cranny, and giving his own personal opinion on the condition of that property. The French, what they call diagnostic, doesn't cover as many aspects of the actual building itself, but they actually are quantified and measured results. For example, when they do a lead paint test, they actually go around the property with like a Geiger counter type pistol, measuring the actual lead paint several layers down, etc. So less subjects, but more in depth, and completely obligatory in France. And the final difference, number 5, is the duration of the purchase. Unfortunately, they don't go as quick as the States either. When you actually find your dream house and you actually agreed on a price, we'll then move forward to what we call a compromis or a promesse de vente. And with that is an initial agreement which is then passed on to the notary. From that period through to the actual final act when the property becomes yours, unfortunately it could be anywhere between 3 to 4 months, sometimes longer. So be prepared for the wait. I know it's not as quick as America, but unfortunately that's the way over here. So there you have it. My 5 main differences between the American system and the French system when it comes to buying a house in France. As I always say, if you got this far, hopefully you found this interesting. So if you don't mind clicking that old like, subscribe and bell button, makes me feel good if nothing else. Also gives me some feedback whether my videos are working. And hopefully I'll see you soon for another one. In the meantime, if you'd like to know more about the different statuses of agents here in France, check out this video here and that'll explain it more in depth.